A new report today claims that Mitch McConnell and the Republicans will try to put stimulus in the continuing resolution bill, the budget bill, to fund the government. And that it will be an emergency stimulus to get you until January. What are the deal provisions? Is this going to be a reality? And why ultimately could this smack Nancy Pelosi in the face like anything she has never seen before? As everything seems to be going south for the Democrats very quickly, and all their deal points are falling apart, should she take it or leave it? These are the breaking details tonight on Being a Mitch. Hey, good evening, everybody. It's Being a Mitch, and it's an evening edition on Saturday night. Hope you're good and safe. And boy, they're breaking developments across the board, and there's new indications now that the cards are being held by Mitch McConnell, and Nancy Pelosi has literally almost no cards to hold whatsoever. The question is, will Mitch give you what you need, or will he become the embodiment of being a Mitch? Thank you for joining me on tonight's special edition. If you've not subscribed, please do, because ultimately I'm getting viewers money by the hour, by the minute. Thousands and thousands of viewers. $250,000 and probably approaching close to $500,000 has been gotten by viewers of this channel. Last night, no less than a dozen viewers jumped into Purple Power Live and said that they got anywhere from several $100s to $20,000, anywhere from heating and gas to electric, utilities, rent, and more. That's ultimately the power of this channel. I'm getting viewers a lot of money, so please subscribe. I have no less than 8 volunteers who are absolutely wonderful human beings who are stepping forward and volunteering to help find you the grants if you're having problems finding them as well. And that ultimately viewers are now realize that this is money they can get right now, rent, utilities, food, ultimately waiting around for a stimulus check that may come in a few days or a few weeks or a few whatever is too much waiting time, and that people need money right now, and this is literally money right now within 24 hours, so please subscribe. Also like this video because it really helps in the rankings. In this video, I'll be going over why that article is really sort of shocking a lot of people, and why it could shock Nancy Pelosi's shoes off her feet, because it's really a big shocker. Did I say shock yet? Then I'll be going over what are the deal items, what you should see in them. Will there be a stimulus check? How big will the stimulus check be? Will there be FPUC? Will it be retroactive? And what about SSI and SSDI? And what are all those other things? Really big developments, and this is why you have to stay with me by the hour. This is just for Saturday, and this is the breaking news. The breaking news as you sit here tonight is that a new report believes that Mitch McConnell and the Republicans will slide into a continuing resolution bill what they want for an emergency second stimulus package, and will basically say, hey, take it or leave it. And if you leave it, then you're not going to have a balanced budget and the government will shut down. Is this what Mitch McConnell wants? That's what the report suggests. And ultimately, it may be the situation that Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden never thought they would ever see. Let me go through the permutations. Let me go through the deal items. Let me go through the items, and let's figure it out together. First, the continuing resolution bill is basically a bill that comes around every few months that is to fund the federal government. And if you don't fund the bill, don't do the bill, then the government shuts down. The bill is basically a very basic bill. When we say a clean CR, we mean a continuing resolution bill that doesn't have a lot of excess in it. Last time this came up for talks between Steve Mnuchin and Nancy Pelosi, they said, we're not going to put stimulus in it. We're just going to get it very basically done. Now, what's important to understand is the continuing resolution bill, through the history of this channel since April, has in times had stimulus in it. It had the stimulus in there for the farmers and the cows. That's why sirloin exists on this channel. The cows got stimulus in a continuing resolution bill. Remember when Nancy Pelosi said, I want some stimulus in there for farmers? Well, I was like, what do you mean? Why are farmers suddenly getting stimulus and no one else is getting stimulus? Well, they got stimulus in there, and it was the continuing resolution. That's what birthed Sirloin, and he came out as, the cow lobbyist, and hence the purpose of the channel. Now, millions of Americans are wondering, wait a second, is this going to happen again? Yes, but the other way. It says a new report. The report says that Mitch McConnell this time, the Republican side, will say, you know what, I want some stimulus in the CR, and the CR has to be done by December 11th, and this is what I want. Let's go over those items first. The December 11th deadline confuses some viewers. They think that the stimulus won't go out until December 11th if it is in the CR. No, the CR deadline is December 11th. Most CRs they've done have been done weeks in advance, so don't expect the stimulus to wait to the very last day of December 11th. Now, it could, but that generally has not happened that way this year. Okay, second, what are the items? Well, the report claims it would include about 5 items, 2 of which are money items, and the remaining 3 are not money items. The first one would be a stimulus check. The second one would be FPUC and unemployment. The third would be eviction moratorium. The fourth would be mortgage forbearance. And the fifth would be student loan of protection, or student loan repayment moratorium. So you see clearly there's 2 money items in there. There's no SSI and SSDI, Social Security Railroad Benefits $2,400 thing. That thing is not in there. Hazard pay not in there. EIDL not in there. Maybe there's PPP in there. But what about the stimulus check and the other item, the unemployment? Well, the article is very vague, but it basically says it'll be a stimulus check. How big? I don't expect it to be big at all. The article does not give a number. I believe it to be somewhere around $1,200. Yeah, that's not a good number. And what about dependents? And what about adult dependents? And what about taking out for child support? Not detailed in the article. I have no idea. Ultimately, this is all up for grabs. Then, FPUC, yes, it is mentioned with a number in the article. How much? As low as $240 a week. What? Yes, FPUC as low as $240 a week. Retroactive? Well, yeah. Thank goodness. How retroactive? To September? September? Yeah, not retroactive to July. Where is this coming from, and what does this mean for you? Well, it would mean at least that UI would not expire in December, thank goodness, and that PUA would not expire in December, thank goodness, and that you would get some FPUC, thank goodness, and would be retroactively to September. Yeah, that's September, October, November, December. That's 4 months. That's 16 weeks. 16 weeks at $200 is a nice $3,000 something check. Yes, but what does this mean for the negotiations? Well, the article suggests that this is what the Republicans would put in there, that they would put in whatever they want, and that they would basically say, here we go, and take it or leave it. And ironically, what's the alternative? Take or leave. If you leave, then the CR is not agreed to and the federal government shuts down. Does that sound really good? No, it doesn't sound good. Shutting down the federal government around the holidays doesn't sound any better than not giving a stimulus check around the holidays. It sounds even worse when you have other things like the smooth transition of power, inauguration, all that other stuff, at a time in which the federal government shut down. Boy, sound a little dramatic? It is dramatic. And ultimately, is it a game that Nancy Pelosi wants to play? Well, the article says that the Democrats would likely not agree to anything less than $400 a week. More about the 400 in a second, which is a strange number. But ultimately, the Democrats have no cards to hold. They have no ammunition. They have no bargaining ammunition in the negotiations, except to go out to the press and say it's horrible to put millions of Americans in the federal government on to shut them down during the holidays. Well, you know what's also really horrible? Not accepting a $400 offer from Steve Mnuchin in July, which is 20 weeks ago, which would amount to $8,000 in unemployment FPUC in people's pockets. People are not getting $8,000 in their pocket because she turned it down. She also turned down a $2,000 stimulus check. Okay, now we're at $10,000 you would have had that she turned down. You know what's also bad? PUA and UI would not have expired in December as they're facing expiration. And student loan repayment and mortgage forbearance. All those things she turned down because she wanted to go over the prepositions and the conjunctions and the grammatical words choices in a testing and tracing bill provision, and trash talk people on broadcast news for 3 weeks about how their grammar was bad. I'm sorry, I can deal with bad grammar. Just give me the $10,000. Who are these people that think that Americans need to be not given $10,000 where they argue over grammar and a language of a bill? Now, ultimately, it starts to look bipartisan, partisan the other way. Let me explain. Many believe that Nancy Pelosi did not accept a stimulus deal to make Donald Trump look bad in coming into election and to hurt his reelection chances. Now, Mitch McConnell can use shutting down the federal government at the start of Joe Biden's administration as a way to make Joe Biden look bad. Do you see how this is unraveling? Yes. Millions of Americans are now looking to Joe Biden to send out stimulus relief and get them back on track. And ultimately, the first item of business could be to try to derail that from the Republicans. It's sort of like if you want to play dirty on one side, you better get ready to be hurt by someone playing dirty back to you on the other side. And ultimately, the only people that are impacted by this is you. The federal government shutdown would not mean that Nancy Pelosi's salary is stopped. No, she's still paid. And that Mitch McConnell's salary is still paid. Yes, he's still paid. And so ultimately, what does this mean for you? If this article is true, then it would mean that two sides would have to basically choose between shutting down the federal government or agreeing to something which is categorically worse than anything that was ever offered in stimulus negotiations, and could have a $400 stimulus check or a $120 stimulus check. I mean, could have something totally crazy in there. But ultimately, when you don't do things on the come and wait, then things get worse. Let's go back on memory lane for a second and look how much stimulus you would have had in your hands had Nancy Pelosi accepted what was offered. The problem solvers, $1,500. Actually, the problem solvers, two $1,200 stimulus checks. You would have gotten $2,400 in stimulus checks on the problem solvers bill. You would have gotten $450 for 8 weeks and 5 weeks at $600. You would have had thousands of dollars. You would have had FPUC, UI, and PUA all extended and not expiring. What did she say about problem solvers bill? Republicanish. I got to reject it. Give me exactly $600. Okay. And what did she offer instead? $500 stimulus checks instead of $2,400 offered by the problem solvers. Sound logical? No. Hazard pay, originally in the Democratic plan, removed by Nancy Pelosi. Still unexplained why it was removed. Did Nancy Pelosi ever give you the $2,400 for SSI and SSDI? No. How about when we look at stimulus checks and hazard pay? Let's do actually FPUC. FPUC, Steve Mnuchin offered $400 a week in July. That was 20 weeks ago. You would have had $8,000. How about Mitch McConnell's FPUC? He offered $350 a week. Over 20 weeks, that would have been about $7,000 in your bank account. What's 20 times 350? That's what is that, about 7,000, 6,000? You would have had that in your bank account. Said you have zero. And you also have UI and PUA expiring. Now, in some states, and I think ironically in Kentucky, UI, which is created by FPUC, the federal UI, the additional weeks of unemployment assistance that was created for CARES Act 1 that would go after your normal unemployment weeks, is expiring. And in some states, it has expired, like Kentucky, allegedly. And that's now getting categorically worse. So suddenly, this whole thing of my way or the highway is literally not only crashing and burning, it's created a bonfire. And it's strange, where is the wake-up call? Ultimately, the wake-up call may be on Monday. when Janet Yellen is announced as Treasury Secretary, and she may not tolerate this anymore, because ultimately she may say, hey, people need stimulus, they need stimulus relief, and that giving some is better than giving none. And at the moment, it's a big none. And as we sit here on Being a Mitch, we ultimately wonder, had the offers of Mitch McConnell been accepted, how much better would millions of Americans live with $7,000, $8,000 in their pocket today than nothing? Coming up next is Evenings in LALATE, followed by Burn Power Live. Stay with me. I think developments on that as well. As always, stay informed, stay smiling, and stay in my life for more.